The Mansfield Reformatory is a very creepy place. Hundreds of thousands of prisoners were locked up there over the working life of the prison, which is well over 100 years. The prison is also famous for being a filming location for films like Air Force One and the main location for The Shawshank Redemption. The prison has been closed since 1990 and is now a tourist attraction. Many people go through it on ghost tours or to check out the filming locations. I decided I wanted to take one of the ghost tours and ended up with a group of 9 of us making our way into the prison. The cold stone exterior looked down at us menacingly as we made our way into the building. Our tour guide was very excited to take us through the prison and seemed very perky. One of the first things you notice inside the prison that it's very cold and damp. It's a dampness that seeks into your bones and is very oppressive. Also, as you move through the cell blocks, you get the feeling of all the people who were ever locked up in there, serving their terms for crimes ranging from stealing to murder. Our tour group made our way through the administration building and back into the cell blocks. Our guide happily pointed out points of interest where there were sightings of ghosts or some horrendous death of a prisoner. We stopped at a cell that had an X scrolled on the wall, and for some reason I found it very disconcerting. I can understand people scratching away the days of their incarceration on the walls, but I wondered, what did this X mean? Why would you draw that? We were moving along the cell blocks when, out of nowhere, we heard the sound of feet running, echoing off the cold stone walls. Our guide stopped deadly still and then turned around and yelled, "Hey, no running allowed in here!" I think they thought it was somebody in our group that had wandered away from us. Then she did a head count and realized that the whole group was there, and there was no one to be seen anywhere. I could see that she was a little unnerved, but tried to play it off as just one of those things. She cleared her throat and said, "Hey, let's get moving." And then suddenly, one of the cell doors slammed shut with a loud clang, which reverberated throughout the entire cell block. I saw our tour guide jump a little, and then there was a look of fear in her eyes. The fear was a contagion that moved through our group. What was once a group of people who were laughing and making small jokes turned into a group of people who were very quiet and wary. The tour guide regained her composure and got us moving again. I could see her glancing over her shoulder at us, but I think she was really looking past us to see if anything was following us. We continued our tour, and there were still a few noises that we couldn't explain. Clanging noises. And at one point I heard somebody cry out in pain. The tour guide, I could see, pretended not to hear this, but there was a look in her eyes which told me she did. We made it to the end of the tour, and she thanked us. But I, for one, was happy that our excursion was over. And I noticed she had a sheen of sweat on her, and her hand shook a little bit. As we walked back to our cars, I looked back up at the prison, and in one of the windows, I could swear I saw a dark shape looming there, watching us go. I couldn't get in my car fast enough and get the hell out of there. I was just starting in my career in ghost hunting, and of course, being in Ohio, I had to go to the most infamous haunted place in Ohio, the Mansfield Reformatory. This prison is filled with ghost stories and creepy tales. Now, some of them I'm not sure will hold up, but on my second visit to the prison, I had one that turned me into a true believer that this place was truly haunted. I made my way into the prison, marveling at the tall stone walls as I entered, and I worked my way through the various hallways. My first stop before heading to the cell blocks was the chapel. The chapel was a fairly large room that had been used for exactly that, a chapel for services for prisoners to attend on Sunday. Eventually, it was used as a meeting room and a place to screen movies. Huge support pillars are spread throughout the room, and at the front there's a small stage for services and presentations. Almost the minute I entered, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck go up, and a tingle of fear filled my chest. I was only a few feet into the room when I looked up, and I saw a shadowy figure appear and then walk through the room. It headed for a door, but the door was closed, but it passed right through it as if there was nothing there. At first, I was just stunned. I couldn't believe what I just saw. This was a bona fide sighting, and I was thrilled and terrified at the same time at what I'd just seen. My excitement quickly went away when I heard a low growling sound come from the middle of the room. There was nothing there, so the sound was just coming out of midair. This made me back up a few steps and even look for the exit. The growling noise echoed off the cracked, plastered walls and filled my ears. This was truly terrifying. I glanced around the room looking for anything else, and for a second I saw the dark shape again. But as quickly as I saw it, it disappeared, and then the growling faded away. I was with somebody else, and I asked them, "Did you just see what I saw and hear what I just heard?" And they were barely able to talk, but they got out a shaky yes. Then the entire area was filled with the sound of church bells. We both jumped a little bit when they started. Again, there was no source for these bells, as I was sure there was none installed in the prison. We shared a look and decided we were going to cut our evening exploring short. On our way out, we told the security person that something had come up and we had to leave early. My friend and I got in my car, and it took me a few moments to get the keys out because my hands were shaking. I got it started. As we drove away, I could hear those bells echoing, and I decided that I probably wouldn't return to that prison ever again. I was living in the Mansfield area and needed to make a little extra cash, so I took a part-time job at the Mansfield Reformatory to help with staging events in the old prison. I'll admit up front, the place kind of creeped me out the first time I approached it. It was just so massive, and the stone walls seemed cold and unforgiving. People told me all kinds of spooky stories about the place and the cell blocks, and I always took them with a grain of salt because I tended not to believe in that kind of stuff. I know every once in a while I would hear a noise or hear a weird creaking sound or feet walking, but I was never able to confirm that they were anything, so I pretty much just blew them off. That was until one day. I was asked to move some ladders and chairs up to the administrative wing of the front part of the prison because it was being renovated. I just finished dropping off a load and was walking down one of the hallways when I heard a scraping sound. Like something was being pulled across the floor from one of the rooms over at the side. This did make me a little apprehensive. I was supposedly the only person working in the building that day. I carefully made my way to the door where I thought I'd heard the sounds come from, and I looked inside, and in the center of the floor was just one singular chair. It was just sitting there all by itself, and I could see that there were some scuff marks on the floor to where it had been moved a few feet from the side of the room. My alarm bell sounded off again and there was nobody in it, and I didn't see anybody go in or out as I walked toward it. I cautiously walked up to the chair and slowly put my hand out to touch it. I guess there was a small part of me that thought I might get a shock or something might grab me, but eventually I did touch it, and it felt normal, but very cold, much colder than the room. I let go of it and laughed a little bit at being scared of just a dumb old chair. I decided the chair might be handy to use in the space where we were doing the renovations, so I picked it up. I began to walk out of the room with it when suddenly a hand scratched down my back, and I stumbled forward, dropping the chair. It clattered to the side of the room. I heard a groaning inside the room, and as quickly as I could, I scrambled out of the room and got into the hall. I hid out there for a bit, not wanting to look inside. I sat there sweating and breathing very quickly. But eventually I got to my feet. I peered inside the room, and what I saw sent a chill through me. The chair was back, sitting in the center of the room, all by itself. Fear gripped me, and I decided that chair could just stay where it wanted to stay, and I would head back downstairs. When I got back down to the main office, I asked my boss about that chair, and he gave me an apprehensive look and said, "Yeah, if I were you, I'd just leave that chair alone." I didn't work there much longer, but for the rest of my tenure, I steered clear of that room and that chair.